So we've got a really important show today, and I'm delighted to be back with Sal and Sarena. You guys are the perfect panel for today's show because, Sal, your experience in law enforcement, and Sarena, your experience first as a prosecutor and now as a criminal defense attorney, I hope is going to help some of the lay people, including me, by the way. I'm not an attorney. Help us understand what's going on in court. First of all, how are you guys doing today? Sal, good to see you again. Sarena, how are you?
I think we're angry.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're great.
No, and I share your anger. We're going to get to that for sure.
Well,
But the thing,
Jason, before you start, the reason we're angry, and it's not that, I hate Eric Adams or I hate this one or there's feelings involved. It's not about having an axe to grind because I'm not lying about anything I've said. We're angry in that there's so much facts and evidence thrown at people, and the low information person who's parroting the talking points and has no idea about anything, they refuse to take a document and read it. Just read it. You'll see what we're saying is true. And the fact that we're going to get to that 8 million people's lives are at risk as we speak and have been at risk since the initial investigation into Eric Adams and they confiscated his stuff. That is so troubling and disgusting that I just can't wrap my head around it. And the governor is to blame. So we'll get to that, though, later on.
yeah, and I mean, I don't mean to be smiling while you're upset about this. I share your anger with it. I'm smiling because I admire your passion. And I know, Sal, that you have been embedded in this situation. You're at the forefront of the reporting on it and all of that. But the first piece I want to get to, because I had the opportunity to be there in court yesterday. People saw I was standing in line and we were able to see Mayor McStupid as he entered the whole place. But the thing that I wanted to get to is because there were so many details that went down in court that I think are going to help us decipher what is going on. Last time we all got together, we spoke about how we have these classified documents filed under seal on the docket. And before we get to that, I just wanted to ask, because a lot of people are confused, Sal. You're rightly talking about low information people who are telling us that Eric Adams has made a deal, he's working with Homeland Security, etc. So before we get into all the new details, I just want to ask, Sarena, help us understand the purpose of a plea agreement, a plea bargain. And correct me if I don't understand it, but let's say, for instance, Sal, in his role as a law enforcement officer, arrests some guy selling cocaine on the street. $100 bag of cocaine, really, frankly, relatively small in the grand scheme of drug enforcement and law enforcement. Maybe Sal even realizes in a busy jurisdiction like New York City, this guy might not even get prosecuted. But he's a dogged law enforcement officer and he's going to try to figure out, he knows, let's say Sal knows from working this neighborhood that building there is producing millions of dollars worth of cocaine. I'm going to tell this kid, hey, you're going to, become a witness and tell us everything we want to know. Isn't it correct that before he can even do that, Sal has to inform this arrested person, hey, it's your right to choose to say nothing at all to me, to invoke the Fifth Amendment. You can talk to a lawyer. He has to. If he doesn't tell that person that it's their right to not say anything, the whole case could go away. That person has discretion as to whether or not he wants to say, yes, Sal, there's $10 million worth of cocaine in that building. I've seen it. I've been in there a million times. He could say nothing. And it's this discretion that the person has that we're trying to make a deal. If we can say, hey, we're not going to prosecute you for this $100. Tell us everything you know. Isn't that substantially different, Sarena, than a person who is the mayor of New York City and his obligation to follow federal law? We can't make a plea arrangement with Eric Adams to enforce federal law. Isn't that a fundamental difference here?
Well, I think the first problem is that you're assuming that Mayor Adams was going to follow the law.
Well, I mean, but he should, is what I'm saying. He's compelled to, right?
You can't. So a plea deal is usually in exchange for something valuable that you wouldn't or ordinarily otherwise have. So a plea offer. So first of all, yes, if Sal arrests somebody and wants to take a statement from him, then before he can get that statement, he has to read him his Miranda rights. He has to tell him that he has the right to remain silent. He has the right to an attorney. Anything he says can and will be used against him, et cetera, et cetera. And that person, if they're smart, will not say anything to Sal and will ask for their lawyer. Once they ask for their lawyer, they will not be allowed to be questioned. Now, later on down the road, if somebody is facing a prosecution, they can try to strike a deal through their lawyer for cooperation, essentially. Sometimes we call it a queen for a day. They come in and they proffer information, and in exchange for that proffer, they'll get kind of a sweetheart deal. That happens through an attorney. I guess in this case, Alex Spiro is Adams's attorney. And so perhaps Alex Spiro went to Trump and said, hey, let me strike this deal. Now, there's a difference, though, right, between saying, I have information about criminal activity of a bigger fish that I'm willing to give you in exchange for a better deal for myself. That's one thing. That's okay. That's cool. We do that all the time. There's something very different from a mayor saying, I'm going to follow the law if you drop my case. Like, that's not a real proffer. That's bullshit.
Because he has no discretion. He's compelled to follow the law. In the other example, we're making a deal with someone who could choose not to cooperate if their lawyer advises them not to. So, Sal, how could this possibly be? They're saying now, and we're going to come back to Sarena for this answer, because again, this is the best panel we could possibly have. Sarena actually worked at Rikers Island, and it's quite clear that the deal that's being made has something to do with Eric Adams' unique power as the mayor of New York City to enable this office for ICE on Rikers Island, right?
Yeah, but the problem is you can have that office there, but to actually have corrections or the New York City Police Department or any city agency actually cooperate with ICE on anything, that is a city law that's enacted that says you cannot do that. So you could be like, I have this great example I always pull. If somebody was, let's say, Serena's in the street, someone walks over, points a gun at her, I want your purse. She hands it over. I'm a cop. I go, freeze, don't move. Police, don't move. And I have my gun out to say don't move because he has his gun. Now he takes his gun, he tucks and runs straight, not towards me, but the other way. I shoot him in the back. Federally, I'll get awards. You're a great cop. Locally, you could be prosecuted. So you have to learn that you don't want to be that cop or that correction officer or anyone in the city that is, you helped ICE. There's a law that says you can't. So now they will internally destroy you, kind of like what happened to me. And then they're going to try to do it in a prosecutorial manner from the city or the state. And they're allowed to do that. And you're going to be stuck in a legal quagmire. So as a cop, what do they always train you? Don't be that guy. So if you do that and you can't, you could articulate this, but again, this is such a politicized issue that if you are caught doing this, I'm sure they will suspend you immediately and make an example out of you. So it's probably not even worth trying, but that's the quagmire you're stuck in. So you could do what you want. You want to write an executive order, that's great. It's going to fall on its face when it's challenged. But if you do cooperate with them and you're caught, or someone takes a video, or somebody becomes an informant and says, hey, Officer so-and-so, he told that ICE agent, you're done. Tag you're it.
That literally happened when I was in charge of internal affairs on Rikers Island. So Sal is speaking truths. So when I was in charge of internal affairs on Rikers Island, so that was, 2016 through Mayor Adams's first day in office of 2022. We didn't have an office on Rikers Island for ICE. Okay. There was an office way back when. The talk now is to kind of reopen it. But at the time I was there, it had been closed for quite some time. We had found out, like Sal said, we got a tip that one of the correction officers told ICE that an individual in custody was illegally there, whatever it is. And she turned over that person to ICE. And I was instructed to take action against that officer by the mayor and by my commissioner, that I needed to, prosecute internally that correction officer, served them with charges, the whole bit. They were disciplined for doing that. So it's not, these conversations are not like just in the ether. They actually have practical effects for people's jobs and for people's freedom, etc. So this issue of Mayor Adams quid pro quoing with Trump and making this deal, striking this deal to enforce rules on Rikers Island with ICE is not just kind of like, all right, it's a list of things that he needs to do. There's real life implications. I'm sure the Department of Correction is scrambling right now as we speak, trying to figure out what the hell to do with all of this.
Uh-huh. So see, you guys are giving us a lot of understanding here, because there was definitely tons of back and forth in court. And Sal has rightly pointed out that it's been revealed to us now that Eric Adams has had his security clearance revoked. They did bring up the FBI JTTF, but Alex Spiro incorrectly, if I heard correctly, referred to it as the JTF. They were pleading with Judge Ho about why they need to, give Eric Adams this deal and not prosecute him. And they were saying that one of the big reasons is that it's impeding his ability to be the mayor, to communicate with the JTF because of this lack of security clearance. And isn't there something in the law, Sarena, that says that you specifically cannot grant someone special treatment because of their political position or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, prosecutors are told, they're taught, they're trained on day one, that you have to prosecute without fear or favor. There has to be, the only reason that you prosecute somebody or don't prosecute somebody has to only do with the evidence that you've collected and the truth that you've understood that evidence to show. It cannot be, you cannot give any favors politically or otherwise to anybody. And, doing so is setting really horrific precedent. And we always say as lawyers, and this is such an important thing for people to understand, and this goes back to what Sal was saying about it doesn't matter if you like somebody or you don't like somebody. The problem is when you do certain things and you set certain precedents for a person that you do like or a person that you do want to favor, you have to understand that you're setting legal precedent in general, so that if somebody comes down the road later, a terrible person or somebody that you don't like politically or somebody who's, undeserving of it, you're going to still have to apply that rule of law that you have established. So this is why, following the law and establishing the right precedents are so important, and they have to be done without fear or favor.
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly a quid pro quo would not be that. So there was a lot of attention paid to whether there was or was not a quid pro quo. Judge Dale Ho he's a pretty new judge. He was appointed by Biden in 2023, and he just didn't really have the kind of grit that I'm used to hearing from judges in the SDNY. He was being, he was asking very politely. I guess maybe it's because these guys were, only in the case of Bove is he a prosecutor, but judges are a lot meaner to me when I'm in court than what was going on there yesterday. But the quid pro quo was the big question, and they sort of established that there was no quid pro quo, or at least that's what they said under oath. And there was something very strange. Sal, you are very accustomed to, kind of on the fly evaluating if somebody is lying to you or not. And that's, yes, there's training, but it's just sort of, that's where we get to a bit of a gut instinct. And I'm not saying that's evidence, but it sometimes leads you to investigate and find evidence. And just the way Alex Spiro carried himself and spoke in court, I felt like he had the confidence that he would not get in trouble for saying something that wasn't congruent with the truth. But at the same time, it wasn't the type of nervousness that you observe in someone who is lying. Do you understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say this with this. Unfortunately, in that room was not Danielle Sassone, who witnessed the quid pro quo right in front of her eyes, and the notes that were confiscated by this corrupt Email Bove. Again, he was put there by Boris Epstein. Remember that name? Do your research on that man who somehow has pull in Trump world. I don't know how. The guy's never tried a case. He's not a real lawyer. He's just a lawyer in name only. Anyone can get a law degree and call themselves that. So this man confiscated notes, and because Sassone was saying something about it, Bove had a problem with it. You're not asking the right people that are involved or were involved the right questions. You kind of eliminated them. So if she was there and she was able to answer that, then we would know who was really lying or telling the truth. It's kind of left open because the the people that were prosecuting this, involved in this, they aren't there. It's just one story, one man who's, I mean, look at Alex Spiro, really. I mean, he's a greasy looking guy. Who's,
he's slick. He's very slick. You're right.
He's slick, but he's the guy that kind of made this deal. If essentially he was arguing these points in DC at that meeting that had Sassone and the head prosecutor there, who I just got last night, someone who actually knows the guy. He said that guy is a full-blown conservative. The actual prosecutor was 3 tours in Iraq, is a full-blown conservative. There's nothing Democrat or liberal. Another low information hook line designed to hook into low information. Oh, these are Democrat lawfare prosecutors. No, they're not. No, they're not. You have 2 conservatives right there, and you eliminated them just to fit your narrative. It's a power-driven narrative. It's people that want power, like Boris Epstein. They're obsessed with it. And without it, then they're back to just being who they are, and they can't handle that. So that's what's driven this whole thing in this case. My whole thing is I'm a guy based on facts and evidence. That's been my whole career. That's what my whole show is about. Fact-based analysis off of evidence and facts. And in this instance yesterday, we only heard one story, but one of the stories, which was alarming, was that it's on public record. Eric Adams' security clearance was revoked. We don't know exactly when this happened, but we know that it's been revoked.
They said when he got indicted was when it was revoked. And that was the main. See, they keep changing you're raising great points, Sal. The other important factor that came up there at the hearing with regard to Bove is that it feels like he keeps changing the reason why we need to let Eric Adams off. It's the election. It's interfering with his ability to, govern the city as the mayor. It's very odd. And you're right. Danielle Sassoon was not there. So first of all, I wanted to ask Sarena, have you ever interacted with Danielle Sassoon or worked with any of these people?
Personally, I have not worked with Danielle Sassoon, but I know people who know her, and she, from what I understand, is an incredibly ethical woman. Always about the law, not about politics, not about favors. She's the type of person to do the right thing, is what I've learned about her. And I think it's pretty obvious based on the letter she wrote and the position she took that is exactly the type of person that she is. Realize that she just came into this a few weeks ago.
Right.
Damian Williams left. The case was actually started even before Damian Williams was the U.S. attorney. Sal loves this point, and he's right to, is that this entire investigation began under Trump #1, under Trump's first term. So to say, that it was politically motivated is a very interesting position to take when the whole thing started under Trump's tenure.
Yeah, well, I want to be cautious, at least for myself, about saying, well, it started under Trump doing this and then it was Biden doing that. It is true that the SDNY prides itself on being this sort of autonomous thing that operates irrespective of who's in charge of the DOA. But I want to ask you something else.
But that's the point. That's the point, right? Because that's why they can't say otherwise.
Right.
So you can't say that, oh, well, it wasn't on Trump because SDNY is independent, and then also say, well, it is political.
Exactly.
It happened when it wasn't Trump. No, either they're independent or they're not.
But this is sort of a fight within that independent thing. And it's also important to remind people, Emil Bove was a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. His first law firm that he went to was Sullivan and Cromwell, the very same law firm that Alan Dulles and John Foster Dulles. This is where the CIA was born. So there's a lot of questions about him, but I want to ask you another technical legal question, Sarena, because on the docket, in addition to all these letter motions from Alex Spiro and stuff, we've got a couple of people who are requesting to file as amicus curiae, friends of the court. We've got that guy, Ackerman, I think his name is, who's a former Watergate prosecutor. We've got a bunch of other prosecutors who are filing things. And then we have the New York Times coming in. Now, I wasn't sure if they're filing as an amicus or if they're trying to intervene on behalf of the people, but they want to unseal these documents. And what I found particularly interesting was that there was a remarkable lack of discussion of any of this sealed information or any of that, Confidential Information Protection Act. We didn't hear very much about that at all. And the judge even said that he feels like there are too many amicus filings for him to deal with right now. So what about that? What about, because the focus is definitely on Eric Adams' security clearance. We have this confidential information here, but we don't know what it is. People who blindly love Donald Trump, no matter what he does, think that Eric Adams is suddenly a great guy. There appears to be this narrative being set up with all these USAID type paid street actors where they want to push, as Sal says, low information Trump voters. I mean, it's like a Broncos game, right? They want people to just root for the Trump, whatever he decides is good, root for that. And that is dangerous because if someone can trick Trump, they're tricking everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't been following Eric Adams since 2022 or before, like Sal and I have, and maybe you too, I mean, you're just coming on the bandwagon now. You got to just be quiet. I'm sorry, but like, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't care which side of the fence you're on, by the way, even if you agree with me completely. If you just joined this conversation and you've done no research, you haven't watched anything, you haven't learned about what's been going on in New York City, you need to just be quiet and open your ears and open your eyes and learn. In general, people should do that, but especially in this type of situation. And if you're just a Trump fan or an Eric Adams fan, like, this is not the place for it. This is something that's been ongoing in New York City since Adams took office. And the only way you could really understand the implications of all of this and all the little chess pieces on the board here is if you understand what's been going on for the last 3+ years. Sal, right? Don't you feel the same way?
But before you move off of that, Sarena, because that's a good point, the chess pieces, this confidential information is like a whole row of pieces that we can't see. We don't know how they move. And they didn't say anything about that in court. How does that affect our ability to understand what is really going on here and why the Trump administration is getting behind Eric Adams?
Right. I mean, I think obviously the New York Times is trying to get that released to the public so that we could know a little bit more. I think I'm still going to go back to what I said earlier about the confidential stuff. I think that was much more about the specifics of the case. I think it might have to do with like the financials that were coming through with Turkey. There's certain things that are protected, but now that we know that his clearance was taken away, maybe it does have something to do with that. Maybe there's confidentiality protections over information that Eric Adams himself was not allowed to see because his clearance was taken away. The point is, we will not know unless it's unsealed and shown to us, even if it has to be redacted so that there's certain things protected. At least let us know what the topic of these documents were that were sealed.
Yeah, exactly. And Sal, there's nobody who's reading these Eric Adams tea leaves more clearly than you. What do you think about all this classified stuff, and why aren't they talking about it at all in court?
Well, it's like I stated last night. I put a post up. I made 2 references of it. With it was a picture I put, like it's a grok picture I made of Eric with a Turkish flag on it, and I make the argument over how no one in the media or the state legislation or any kind of legislation is questioning how this man, he has no security clearance. So just so you understand, if he was indicted in September, he was investigated, and then subsequently everyone around him was raided, and that includes the police commissioner at the time. The next person in line that would take a hearing or hear a security briefing hearing would be the police commissioner. That person could not do it also because he was raided. Then the next police commissioner, he was raided. He was there all the way past like into November, so they're already setting up for all these big events: the Thanksgiving Day parade, New Year's Eve, Christmas, Halloween. Wow. These are now who is taking security briefings during this time? And that's why Kathy Hochul, who had the chance to remove him way back when he was first indicted, but she's afraid of losing the low information vote, which is huge in New York City. Because of that, she didn't remove him. Now she's thinking about it, not thinking about it. But the fact remains, Eric Adams had no security clearance from then up until today. And some of his officials underneath him didn't have a security clearance either. So who is getting these security briefings and, being told what's going on with JTTF? In a city of 8 million people, it's the financial capital of the world, which means they're always a target. Yet, we saw other cities in like Louisiana had a terrorist attack. So is Eric Adams prepared? Clearly not, which means New York City citizens aren't prepared. So
Right.
Kathy Hochul, before we even think about removing Eric Adams, and trust me, that man should be in handcuffs and incarcerated right now. Kathy Hochul needs to be removed, not even today, yesterday. She's an incompetent woman. The only thing she's worried about is her vanity projects. Oh, the Buffalo Bills Stadium.
Right.
Oh, congestion pricing.
They got canceled.
The number one city in America. She wants the cameras on. The number one city, the most, everything revolves around New York City, whether anyone wants to hear it or not. It is right now very capable of being hit from some kind of attack, and the mayor wouldn't even know about it or have access to any information for the last, how many months now? 6 months we're going on? That is ridiculous. Kathy Hochul should be removed.
But shouldn't the legal remedy for that be to install someone who is legally qualified to act as mayor while this guy is being prosecuted? We can't say, well, since he's the mayor, he gets to break all these laws and nothing happens. I mean, it goes back to what I was asking Sarena at the top of the show, doesn't it?
Well, again, Kathy Hochul had a chance to remove him immediately when this happened. We already knew the crux of the case. And we already learned, I had another article I posted in regards to one of these Turkish straw donors that's a real estate tycoon. He has ties back to Vladimir Putin, Russian oligarchs. Eric Adams, the question is going to be, is this guy a foreign asset or is he a asset for somebody somewhere? And his cronies along with him that involve in all kinds of criminality. For these reasons alone, he should have been removed immediately. And the fact that this real estate racket in New York City is in the shadows pushing, he can't be prosecuted. Eric Adams apparently can't be prosecuted, apparently can't be removed. Who the hell is this guy? Yeah. He's running the city. He's running. I mean, who is he?
Well, and he's also
a swagger man with no plan, apparently.
Exactly. He's also involved in potentially a real estate
casino bids also. Any casino bid. He was trying to curry for a certain casino in New York City to become the main casino, like, because Kathy Hochul is only going to prove 3 of them. One of them is Hudson Yards. I believe Eric Adams is the one who's like rah-rahing that all the way through. So again, this guy is involved with many people. Listen, you start to have to ask this question. Is he a foreign asset or some kind of other kind of asset? And he's just an asset in general, which is why he's not in jail where he belongs. He's still in office where he certainly shouldn't be. And you go to yourself, if I trip on a banana peel outside, I'm in jail. If I spit on a sidewalk, I'm in jail. This guy has done all kinds of crimes. Sealed documents are in his case of national security importance. And he referenced this yesterday in his hearing. But he's still the mayor, and somehow Kathy Hochul hasn't removed them or removed them 6 months ago when she read the indictment initially. And it involves these people in this real estate racket.
Let's continue exploring it, Sal, because I agree with you. The real estate racket is very likely part of it. Eric Adams, we know, owns real estate. Very difficult to do on a police officer's salary. Yep. Letitia James as well. I want to ask you both about this interview from the other day with Tom Homan and Eric Adams on Fox and Friends, because there was something revealed in this interview, Sarena, that I think came up again yesterday, basically. Well, it's not that it came up again, but it was very relevant to what was happening in court yesterday. In this interview, Steve Ducey, let's just listen to this for a moment. Steve Ducey reminds the mayor about a detail of his deal, and let's just hear what he had to say.
How many women aren't being raped by the cartels? How many children aren't drowning? How many women and children aren't being sex trafficked in this country? President Trump's a game changer. Mm-hmm. And every day, I'll say it 100 times, every day he proves to me why he's the greatest president in my life.
So what happens is Steve Ducey, here we go.
In addition to not interfering with your election coming up, one of the other things was they needed you to essentially assist Tom with the migration problem here in New York City.
He's going to tell Eric Adams that they can bring the case back.
What that looks like. What that looks like.
And Adams says, no, they can't, right? So I'm sorry, I forgot. The way I've got it set up today, I can't hear the audio in that video. Did we hear Eric Adams be not aware that the case was being dismissed without prejudice and that it could be brought back right away? Because he says to Steve Ducey here, oh, no, that's not the deal. But then the very next day in court, he made it clear that he understood that that was the deal. But he wasn't upset at all. Again, it strikes me as somebody who knows that whatever we say in public, whatever we say in court, that doesn't matter. We know the deal, and we, the public, are never going to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, he's just basically parroting his own attorney. Alex Spiro was also basically saying, not basically, he said to the public, the case is over. It's not proceeding. That was a lie. And you might want to say and be right to say that Eric Adams doesn't understand the law, because God knows he doesn't understand it. He doesn't follow it. But his lawyer, Alex Spiro, knows the law. He knows the deal he worked out. Why is he telling the public that the deal is that Eric Adams's case is over, point blank, zero, done. It's not coming back. The case is over. That is not what the deal was at all. And you have to wonder what the tactic there is. Are they just, I mean, for me, it's probably, I would land on, they're just trying to convince the public and everybody else, low information people, as Sal likes to say, that everything's hunky-dory. But you have to read the document. You have to understand what's actually going on to know what the deal is. And the deal is way worse than a dismissal for us, meaning New York City citizens. It's way worse because the fact that they could reopen the case at any time means that Trump has a leash on Eric Adams, and Trump has his thumb on the scale. And basically, if Eric Adams doesn't behave himself, he's going to be facing that indictment again, potentially. And he knows that, even though he says he's in the free and clear. It's not true.
But Sarena, isn't it true that setting it up that way absolutely makes it appear that Trump is improperly and illegally controlling the mayor? And so if we go down this admittedly speculative road of saying, well, Emil Bove set this up because he's a lawfare plant who's there to damage Trump, hasn't he just tied the most complicated knot that's going to be virtually impossible to untie? And doesn't he give Democrats an incredible arsenal of legal ammunition to make the exact claims you're just fearing right there?
There's a few things to think about there. First of all, I don't know that everybody in that room, whoever did that little handshake deal, knew that this was going to blow up the way it did. You have to understand that, like, I mean, it would seem that it would be obvious that the public would find out the details of this deal, but the way that everybody acted, it almost felt like they didn't know that Danielle Sassoon was going to blow this up, and that everybody was going to go crazy over this. And I think that's also probably why Eric Adams and his lawyer, Alex Spiro, told the public, like, yeah, no, it's good to go. Like, maybe they did not realize or recognize that people were going to dig into these details and say, wait a minute, this is not just your run-of-the-mill dismissal. This is a dismissal without prejudice. A lot of people overlooked that. And I think that they underestimated the amount of interest and the amount of intelligent people keeping their eye on things. And now we know, and it blew up, I think, way bigger than anybody could have ever expected. And the other reason I think that is because Emil Bove's letter and the underlying decisions of why they dismissed this case, you know, the bullshit of like, oh, it's just interfering with his job, and Damian Williams made damaging statements, and I don't care about, you know, the veracity of the claims and whether the evidence is real or not, and he could totally be guilty. I don't care if he's guilty. That seems to me like not only haphazardly done, but almost without a strategic thought in Emil Bove's mind, because the second this thing blew up and people really started unraveling it and saying, wait a minute, this is dismissed without prejudice. Wait a minute, these reasons for dismissal do not make any sense, are totally unprecedented. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, maybe Emil Bove did not, you know, underestimated the public, underestimated what we were going to find out.
Wait a minute now. I'm on board with what you're saying about Eric Adams being an absolute dunce and possibly not understanding the law. But Emil Bove and Alex Spiro, I mean, these guys have been attorneys for 20 years or something. How could they not know that a case having to do with the mayor of New York City? I mean, the other thing that came up
Not that
in
they
court,
don't know, but that we wouldn't find out.
but how could they possibly think that? And the other thing that Emil Bove was arguing vigorously for is that it's the default posture, according to him, for a 48A motion to be considered without prejudice unless specified. I understood it was the other way around.
It is the other way around.
Yeah, it is.
Here's the thing, Jason. I'm going to go way back. Trump's original defense team in his case with Letitia James, and then I think in the next case with the Judge Ergeron. If you remember who his original defense attorney was, because he just had a huge acquittal the other day in California, was Joe Tacopina. Now, Joe Tacopina was on the case, and he stepped away. He never really said why, other than there was some minor differences behind the scene. Now, remember what I told you. Boris Epstein is the head of his legal counsel. I don't know why. He's never tried a case. I don't know why. He's a good bootlicker to Steve Bannon and company who brought him into national prominence. The guy doesn't know what he's talking about. In fact, a traffic attorney has more experience in court than Boris Epstein does. So obviously there's a difference behind the scenes, and it leads to who? Emil Bove becomes Trump's lead defense counsel in this case. And what happens? He was convicted. That's why he's convicted, because he doesn't have the right guys defending him. And now Emil Bove is now a deputy attorney general in New York. Not New York, of
the nation.
And you got to really think what is really going on behind the scenes. And I keep pointing to Boris Epstein, who introduced this Emil Bove. Boris Epstein, again, you got to look at his whole background, where he's from, how'd he come into prominence, what makes him this grand wizard of a lawyer, because he's, in my opinion, the guy shouldn't be anywhere near Trump or his orbit. Everything he's touched has gone straight into the gutter. In fact, he's involved in his own quid pro quo, which was reported in the New York Times when he was trying to basically ask for payments so that certain people could be on the Trump cabinet as far as being nominated. Scott Bessent being one of them. And there's evidence of that, and I don't know what happened to that investigation. Seems like everything. Boris Epstein's been arrested 2 times. Who is this man, and why is he so close to this family? They say he knows Eric Trump. Isn't it funny? Eric Trump was the one saying Eric Adams did favors for my family. Goes back to Boris. That's your guy. That's the reason. People should be calling this clown up. And I think he has also a vested interest or people he knows at the New York Post, which also always produce positive articles of Eric Adams and Steve Bannon, whereas the New York Daily News, who you think is more liberal, and I understand a lot of the stuff they do points that way, but they do in their articles write facts. They'll give their opinion on a fact, but they write the facts. The Post is cheerleading. I mean, Alan Dershowitz came out, oh, this is political. Here's another guy, and he's attached to what's his name? Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
If I was him, I would just steer clear of this whole subject. It doesn't involve him. But they trot him out there. Again, this is a Boris Epstein thing. I just keep pointing to that. And if you look back at Trump's own defense, he didn't have a shot in court with that guy, Emil Bove. At least with Joe Tacopina, who's well-known. The guy just got an acquittal on a guy who was charged with a gun trying to kill someone. A lot more serious than anything they said Trump did. An acquittal in California in a liberal court. Joe Tacopina had a really good shot, and he kept saying he had a little bit of a defeat. He wasn't going to reveal his defense, but he was taken out before he even knew it. And to Emil Bove, Trump was found guilty. And now here he is writing things. You shake your head and go, what is he doing? Once again, Boris Epstein is your guy, and that's where you should look. I'm being critical. Listen, I voted for President Trump 3 times. No one is a bigger supporter of the man than me. I lost my job because of that. The police department made everything political. So if anyone's going to be critical, if people call me a liberal or whatever, no, I'm telling you how it is. This is a fact, what I'm telling you. I'm telling you how it is. He is doing great. Today, Kash Patel he's finally the head of the FBI. He is doing phenomenal things as the president. But in this instance, this is a huge crack in the foundation that could come back around and bite you. As me and you discussed, Jason, this could be used in the future for Democrats to run on a platform and eventually take back Congress, take back the Senate, and they'll impeach him. That's exactly what the game plan is. And they have something because it is corrupt. It's corruption. And I don't know how they can fix it now. You can't take the toothpaste, stick it back in the toothpaste bar once it's out. So I'm just trying to tell you, Boris Epstein, this man should just be removed from Trump world already. Cut your ties. The guy's no good.
You're right, Sal. I agree with you. We've been exploring this for a while, but take us a little further down the road, if you're able to, with Joe Tacopino. Why did he leave? What do we know about the reasons that he left the Trump legal team?
He only said that there was a difference of opinions, and he wished Trump well. He came on, he was on Sid Rosenberg's show.
Oh, he saved ASAP Rocky.
Yes, ASAP Rocky was acquitted because of Joe Tacopina in a liberal court. A liberal judge. So you'll say, oh, it's a bad jurisdiction. He got acquittal. His record speaks for Joe Tacopina. Look at his record. The record amount of acquittals this man has. He's not he's not one of these guys. Oh, he's a Republican. He's a Democrat. No. Some things are just a job. You could ask Sarena as a lawyer. How do you get your job done? It's not, oh, the judge is a Republican. I'm a Republican. No, this is why there's so many low information people in this country. I swear, I really pray at night for the safety of this country they listen to parroted talking points from Fox, CNN. They never do any research. And those that do, they then say we're liberals or wherever, because no, we actually just read things and look at documents and lead where the facts are. That's the point.
It's not just that, Sal. It's also because each of us have our own unique firsthand experience within this corrupt system and have an understanding of it from a certain point of view that most people have never even seen. So you're bringing up this thing with Joe Tacopino, and I remember him now, but I'm glad you brought it up. It's amazing what we're doing here with these panel sessions because it brings out a lot of information. Now, Sarena, something that I've experienced in my sort of lawfare assault that's been happening to me for the past 8 years, one of the key things, and again, this has nothing to do with being a lawyer. This isn't something I'm going to teach you in law school. This is counter lawfare school. But one of the key things that they strive to do is, first of all, make it virtually impossible for the target to obtain legal representation. So, for instance, if you look at the January 6th people, most attorneys wouldn't even represent those defendants because they feel that it was a smear on their law firm or themselves. And so with Trump, we've seen that amplified like crazy. And you see, when things happen in court, I also love speaking to attorneys like you because when you and other attorneys are expressing, whether it's on the news or in private conversations, confusion about what's going on in court, like this never happens, this shouldn't happen, whatever. To me, that is a blaring klaxon that we're looking at lawfare. And so, Sal, here you have some insight into Tacopino saying there was a disagreement, but as you said, Boris Epstein and other people who are inside on the Trump legal team, if they see someone who is actually trying to defend Trump rather than deceive Trump into thinking they are trusted lawyers who are later going to backstab him, they want to push that person out. Because for me, my lawyer worked against me in the case, and it took a very long time for me to figure that out. But that is a key to lawfare, and I've just realized this. I'm calling it controlling both sides of the caption. They have a lot of ways to do that, but Sarena, does any of what I'm saying help you kind of recalibrate this and think about it from a lawfare standpoint?
Well, I don't know enough to know whether this whole thing is a setup. I tend to not fall into the conspiracy theory type of realm normally, which is why it actually kills me to be in the position that I am in, because I know that in the Adams administration, there was so much corruption, and I hate sounding like a conspiracy theorist because I just never am that person.
But they have an actual conspiracy. There's evidence of an actual.
Exactly. And so what I'll say to you is I'm not going to put anything past these people because I've dealt enough with this administration to know that there's a lot that goes on that people would not believe is going on. So, I think time will tell a little bit with this. And, everything is about the show for this guy, for Eric Adams. The reason he has Alex Spiro is also, it's all for the show. I know we're saying a lot about his finances and the fact that he could afford real estate and all that stuff, but let's be real. He doesn't have Alex Spiro money. He doesn't. Okay.
How can he afford that?
He can't. So Alex Spiro took the case because he wants notoriety. And Mayor Adams took Alex Spiro because he wants to look like a rich guy, because that's all this guy cares about, is looking like some important person, because he, I don't know, has some sort of complex about him. He's not an impressive person, but he's been dying to look impressive, and he's a wannabe type of guy his whole damn life. Between the suits that he wears and the nightclub that he frequents and the lawyers that he's surrounding himself with, it's just a desperate show from somebody who's terribly insecure. And so, all of this is a show in my mind. And this is a show that's really great to watch if you're not somebody who's living in New York City and dealing with the repercussions of this insanity.
I would just caution for one quick second to not jump to the conclusion that Alex Spiro is purely for show, because remember that detail. When I sued the city of New York and Twitter and Elon Musk, Goodman versus the city of New York et al., I attempted to get a waiver of service from Quinn Emanuel by communicating with Alex Spiro, and remember, they refused to represent Elon Musk. Now, nobody knew at that time years ago that Alex Spiro was also representing, or would in the future represent, Eric Adams. And I think that there was a conflict of interest where he couldn't represent Elon Musk in this case because he knew it involved the city of New York and a crooked deal with Eric Adams. Sal, while you're giving us what you're going to say, I just want to show everybody this video of Eric Adams. And there we see Alex Spiro walking in his suit with a thing in his hand as they go to the car. These guys left court yesterday like they were leaving a bank robbery. Boom, there's Eric Adams into the SUV. And there's Spiro into the car right behind him. And then they speed off right there.
I say, for people that say conspiracy theories, that coming from many low information people, that one called me a fake news propagandist this morning. Me, fake news. I present all the documents. That must be fake. Look, we are throwing around what we call ideas, but the ideas, it's again based off of facts. So when we tell you something, I'm telling you, Boris Epstein, I'm telling you for a reason. It is a fact that he's been running Trump's legal camp for years now, but he doesn't have the acumen to do it. Now you may say, okay, well, he likes the guy or whatever. That's fine and dandy, but the evidence shows he's incompetent by what he's done. He's totally incompetent.
Or corrupt, even worse.
Corrupt and incompetent. So why is he there? I don't know. They say he's friends with. I know why he came to prominence, though. He came through prominence propagating himself on that Steve Bannon War Room show. The CCP funded one, Miles Guo. Remember that guy who, by the way, they threw in prison, and that guy's facing like 30 years. But the co-conspirator on that case was Steve Bannon, yet again. But nobody wants to report that. Nobody wants to look at that. I keep telling you where to look if you want to do the digging and you want to actually look into this a little more than what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, here are the facts. Here's the road. Here's the evidence. It's staring you in the face. You could be low information and go, and like a seal, you clap, everything Trump does is great, everything Biden does is wrong, or clap, everything Biden does is great, everything Trump does is wrong. But the facts are staring you in the face. And at some point, you should look in the mirror, look at yourself and go, I have my own soul. I have my own brain. Nobody tells me what to do. Like me. See me? People are alleging that Roger Stone tells me what to do. I'm not Pinocchio. I'm no one's puppet. Unlike Eric Adams, who is Geppetto, was staring on the couch with him. Nobody tells me what to do, okay? I'm telling you what I know from my life experience. I've been involved in around all these different kinds of people. I was in law enforcement. I'm telling you what I say 9 out of 10 times ends up becoming, oh my God, how did he know that? And it's not like rocket scientists. It's the fact that based off of facts, you give your analysis and your evaluation, which is what you would do if you were a cop and you were trying to, work a case, or a prosecutor working their case in a courtroom. That's all this is. Life is like a courtroom. When you figure that out, then you're ahead of the curve. But as long as you're parroting and listening to parroted talking points, you're a low information like sock puppet on a couch that they're keeping dumbed down on purpose. And unfortunately, New York City is full of low information voters, and that's a shame. So what's going to go on right now, it's going to continue to go on because no one demands anything of what I'm saying. I sound the alarm. A lot of other people are listening, but not enough that should or could make a difference.
Sarena, Pam Bondi talk to us about that, because when she was sworn in, she said at the press conference that she had no idea that this case wasn't even dismissed. And by the next day, Sal, wasn't she adamantly supporting Emil Bove? What did you think about that?
I don't know, Serena. I don't know if you want to talk.
Go for it, Sal.
I love Pam Bondi. She's a fellow Italian. Okay. What she's doing, she came out swinging against Hochul and Letitia James. All of that just stalled thanks to Eric Adams. Her name is.
But wait a minute, Sal. Wait a minute. She wasn't swinging. Those were civil suits, and she misled everybody, saying today we've brought charges. Didn't Pam Bondi mislead us?
Yeah, they're charges in a civil court. They're not charges on a criminal case, because
that was very misleading. Shouldn't she have said we've brought action, we've brought a suit? Isn't that misleading, Serena, to call a civil suit charges?
Her choice of words were incorrect. She should have said we have brought a civil suit, or we're bringing a case that's in civil in manner. And, again, in civil court, though, you could come up with a lot of evidence that leads to some kind of criminal indictment. But she came out swinging, and it was a big thing, only that the very next day, I believe, they announced this whole thing through her deputy, not even her. She's never signed off on anything. And the only thing you knew from her is that she stated that, I thought that was going to be dismissed. I'll be looking into that. And then Trump was asked, and he said, I have no idea about any of this stuff. So those. Sounds like there's some interference. Maybe it's somebody from the law information. But
everyone's bugging us.
But that's the point. Is what I said is the fact, because as far as what went on, she said this. I don't know if she knows anything about this case. No one's asked her, and she's not on the record for any of this stuff.
I was going to say that, right? Too.
And you're saying, know, because you ran in the DA's office is usually assistant district attorney, knows all the facts. The person that runs the whole operation, there's very little they're going to personally ever try to get involved in. They have a whole system to run underneath them, kind of like a corporation. So,
yeah. And that's actually something that Danielle Sassoon pointed out about Damian Williams. When Emil Bove was like, oh, Damian Williams is running this because he, all of these political reasons why he's going up against Adams and he's making terrible statements. And Danielle Sassoon is in her letter is like, I took over from him and I looked to see what kind of role he played. And it was exactly the type of role that is in every case, which is he's an overseer. He's a manager. He probably makes some decisions. Of course, Mayor Adams is a high profile case compared to some others, but SDNY typically handles very high profile cases no matter what. And so Damian Williams was doing his job, but it didn't sound like he was infiltrating or pressuring anybody to do anything specific. So it's like you said, it's a hierarchy. Same with, everywhere, every prosecutorial office.
And before Jason, you chime in, I want to say one thing. This now, that no one thought this through. The ramifications of this decision today have now led to Sam Bankman-Fried trying to get pardoned. He's screaming his case was political.
This is
Puff Daddy, Mr. Freakoffs, he's screaming the same thing. Luigi Mangione is screaming the same thing. And this, in the history of this country, there was only one case I believe I could find, and I got to look this up again. It was in the early 70s in front of the Supreme Court where they said it was a political case. There's nothing else that's ever been discussed as political. But because of this move and that there were no grounds to dismiss the case, they didn't say that, so if Eric Adams' case is evolved around the Turkish airline upgrade, then he should have dismissed that, saying, this is a farce because this never happened. But it did. It is. It's got so much more to do that they don't even want to explain it to you because it's so bad. But that now is going to be the defense of many defendants in this country saying, my case is political. And that's it. What are you going to do now? Congratulations, Emil Bove. Congratulations.
Everything that you guys are saying is exactly what I'm talking about, Sal. You said we're not just speculating here. We're giving people a hypothesis based on the evidence that we see, going through the process that you would go through as a police officer that then has an even higher standard perhaps when someone becomes a prosecutor. Because, you're going on hunches sometimes to find evidence that then gets delivered to a prosecutor that needs to prove things beyond a reasonable doubt or a shadow of a doubt in court. And because everything is happening in a way that is so wrong, that's what I'm saying. That's a sign that this is lawfare and sabotage. There are so many things that don't make sense. And the one thing that makes it all make sense is that there is a team embedded with Trump that is attempting to weaponize this case against him, and we see them succeeding when major news outlets like USA Today can publish things like this. Our justice system held Trump accountable. Now he's weaponizing the Attorney General and the Department of Justice. This is an opinion piece, of course, but they're going to start flooding us with these opinion pieces. And it is my allegation that this is being done not only to impeach Trump, not only to thwart this process, but because the lawfare criminals that are doing this are the individuals who are on the hook. I'm talking about Norm Eisen, Andrew Weissman, Benjamin Wittes, all of these people. When Trump says, hey, we're going to prosecute the bad prosecutors, I think what we are witnessing is the prosecutors circling the wagons and doing everything that they can do to burn down the very Department of Justice that would be used to prosecute them. This is an act of survival right here.
And it's funny you mentioned that because that article said, oh, Trump was a convicted felon and all that stuff. And saying it's funny because the guy who actually is on both sides of the argument is Emil Bove, who didn't represent him well and got him convicted. And then now is the one writing these memos. Emil Bove is in the center. They don't even mention other than, oh, he wrote this memo. He was there. He got convicted. It was him providing the defense. He was the lead guy on this team, other than Boris, who's on top, again, who brought us Emil Bove. You have to answer. You have to ask yourselves these questions for real. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? How is this guy in charge of not only Trump's defense that got him a conviction, but now he's in charge in the Justice Department doing all kinds of corrupt stuff. So you're right. It could be a setup. You don't know. We're asking questions saying, what is going on here? But again, I keep pointing, Boris Epstein's the guy you really need to ask and the guy you really need to put a focus on because this guy came through him. Because Joe Tacopina was in that case, and we probably would have done a much better job. I could almost guarantee it, since he's getting acquittals across country in liberal jurisdiction in California for a guy on a gun charge and an attempted murder rap. So that's all. You arrest your case there.
He was facing 25 years. Let me give you one more piece on Emil Bove, because he was unimpressive in court at once, but also he ticked all these boxes, Sarena, from a procedural standpoint, where he was talking about the various tests, the multi-pronged tests to satisfy any particular statutory requirement that the judge was trying to adjudicate. Forgive my use of the big words there, but I'm getting bombarded with all this lawyer crap. Sometimes you have to say that stuff. But in other words, there are certain guidelines about what the judge needs to do based on the law. And Emil Bove brought up some of those prongs and spoke about his 10 or 12 year, whatever his background was, and how statutorily the judge needs to presume that this guy is being honest unless there is copious evidence of otherwise. And on this record, that evidence isn't there. So I remember sitting in the court thinking, you know what, this is a crap deal, but this guy has it stitched up.
Well, the truth of the matter is, in every case, there is extreme discretion given to the prosecution's office when it comes to dismissing a case, no matter the conditions. That's just the baseline. And the judge is not going to not follow that rule, right? He's the judge. And so there does have to be a substantial amount of proof shown that it's not in the public's best interest or that there's something else going on in order for the judge to stick his foot out and actually prevent the dismissal of charges in a case. 9 times out of 10, more than 9 times out of 10, when a prosecution team or a prosecutor's office says, judge, we want to dismiss the case, a judge really just defers to them. There doesn't really seem to be ulterior motives. It's a rubber stamp like you're motioning. It's true. In this case, with all of the talk that's going on and issues that we have here, a judge is not going to just rubber stamp it. But on the other hand, we can't pretend or act like the judge has much say in the matter. There really has to be some sort of black and white finding here that, things are really corrupt or that It's really not in the best interest in the public. for the public. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what Beauvais was going into, the incredibly high bar, how rare it is for a judge to deny a motion under Rule 48A and how high the bar is. That's what I mean by having it so stitched up. I mean, I know that the things that you and Sal are telling me and the viewers, it's not like you're telling us this stuff, you're showing us the evidence. These are documented, admitted to things that can't be denied, but yet the part of this that the public doesn't really get, that you got to be there in court. I mean, I was sitting there knowing that these guys, as I said, it feels like Alex Spiro is putting on some kind of a show. They were talking about the quid pro quo, and Alex Spiro said there was no quid pro quo. I'm ready to raise my right hand right now. And it's like, there's a little bit over the top, isn't it, Alex Spiro? This is what I mean, Sal, by I didn't feel like he was lying like some person who's fearing for their life or their freedom is lying, but I did not feel like he was being honest and that he had some overriding, very strong feeling that nothing was going to happen to him because somebody who's in charge of all this told him to say this. That was my feeling.
Again, if you don't get anything out of what we've said for the last hour, you're going to remember at least three things. Number one, email Bove. Who is this man? How is this guy on two sides of the fence? He's the reason Trump was found guilty. He's also the reason you have all this crazy corruption talk that was never even on the radar for President Trump at all. This was never going to be a problem, never even going to be an issue. It has now become an issue. Thank you, email Bove. Secondarily, who's Boris Epstein? Why is this guy in Trump land? Why is this guy so prominent when he's done nothing? He's a relative no one. Some of the stuff is secret other than he's been arrested twice. And again, he was in his own quid pro quo scandal because he was trying to curry favors and get money from people to be nominated for Trump's cabinet.
Yeah.
And he was busted. And I don't know what happened with that. And then finally, Kathy Hochul, who's the governor of the state, as incompetent and as corrupt and as criminal as Eric Adams is, he has had no security clearance or been able to sit at a briefing with the JTTF. New York City is a target 24/7. Right now, he still doesn't have this clearance. Kathy Hochul has allowed this man to run the city with no clearance. And some of his cronies, police commissioners, had no clearance, leaving you high and dry and jeopardizing public safety. You know, what is it? Public safety is the prerequisite to prosperity. That's Eric Adams' line. Well, Kathy Hochul has left you high and dry. She should be removed. If there's a way to criminally charge her because of this, I would move that. Pam Bondi should look into this immediately. How this woman knows this and does nothing. Instead, she's worried about the Buffalo Bills and congestion pricing, not the safety of 8 million citizens who majority voted for her somehow in the last election because it's a low information bubble. Get informed, read documents, read the tea leaves, and you'll come to the same conclusion that me, Jason, and Sarena have.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm sensitive to Serena's schedule. I know she's got to jump. So, Sarena, if you need to leave, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to wrap it up in just a minute here. People should follow Sarena at Townsend Sarena on X. Anything you want to say before you drop off, Sarena?
Oh, God, so much.
Well, we'll do another one real soon.
One.
The one thing I wanted to leave everybody with, because Sal was just telling us about it, was this piece right here from CBS. And I'm not that impressed by CBS News, but it includes a quote from former Missouri Governor Eric Greitens, who submitted a sworn declaration to the transition team alleging that Mr. Epstein's overall tone and behavior gave me the impression of an implicit expectation to engage in business dealings with him before he would advocate for or suggest my appointment to the president. So that's exactly what Sal was talking about. I don't understand how this does not get addressed, but I want to thank both of you guys for joining me and remind everybody that you can support Crowdsource the Truth by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, or subscribestar.com, or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And let me just check one real quick last second before we log off if Judge Dale Ho has weighed in on any of this insanity. Here we are at 5 o'clock. The court is closed. And no, the judge has not ruled. These guys are really used to getting paid by the hour, Sarena.
He doesn't want to shoot from the hip, which I respect. I do. And I do, in my experience, feel like judges take their time, especially in federal court, before making such major decisions. This is an unprecedented situation. This could be precedent setting. And we have to be very wary of the decisions that are made. So I'm telling Ho, take your time.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. Sal, any last words before we sign off?
Yeah, what I'm saying is at a position out of love, basically. I voted for somebody 3 times. I am heeding warning signals, and I don't want to see somebody be compromised themselves due to corrupt actors around them or the corrupt positions that they're putting the president in. This is like warning, ringing the alarm bells. I know what he's doing overall versus this, and it's just complete contradiction of everything. And it seems like we have some rogue actors who need to be looked at, and one in particular, Boris Epstein. So I hope they get this right and somehow this all gets resolved. And do not forget Kathy Hochul's fingerprints. This woman is incompetent. I cannot believe she allowed the city to be run by a guy who does not have a security clearance. And his team, his other guys, his police commissioners also had they couldn't be in a briefing. It's unbelievable that this happened. And you just went through Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, Halloween, the Stonewall parade, also all these different things that Eric Adams had no idea that could have been compromised at any moment. It's quite scary. In fact, Kathy Hochul should be removed.
Totally unbelievable, and you're absolutely right. I also want to remind people to follow Sal on X at @SalGreco, and don't forget to visit salgreco.com, tap on the support tab, and send Sal some love and support. Keep the show going. Don't forget to watch him on The Finest Unfiltered. Thanks to both of you for joining me today. Very interesting panel. We're going to continue to watch this incredibly mysterious and crazy USA versus Eric Adams as it unfolds. Thanks for watching, everybody.